The leftover ticket to Paris. Grand Central Terminal in New York is always a sea of rushing faces. People are always moving. Work, family, deadlines, everyone is chasing something. But on a cold Tuesday evening in November, Eleanor was running away from something. Or rather, someone. Eleanor was a 27-year-old archivist from London, living in New York. Her life was orderly, quiet, and safe. But just 2 hours ago, her fiancé had told her that he was in love with someone else. The wedding was off. Her future was gone. With her heart in pieces, Eleanor did not want to go back to her empty apartment. Instead, she walked into the Grand Station, sat on a wooden bench near the back, and cried silently. The world kept moving around her, completely indifferent to her pain. After an hour, she wiped her tears and prepared to leave. As she stood up, something caught her eye. Right beside her on the bench was a small, elegant envelope. It was cream-colored, made of heavy paper, and completely unaddressed. Curiosity replaced her sadness for a brief moment. Eleanor picked it up, opened the envelope, and gasped. Inside was a Eurostar train ticket from London St. Pancras to Paris Gare du Nord. The departure date was for the very next morning. Along with the ticket, there was a handwritten note. The handwriting was sharp, beautiful, but slightly shaky, as if written with a heavy heart. The note read, "I bought this ticket hoping we could start again in the city where we first fell in love, but you never showed up at the station. I leave this ticket here, in the heart of New York, because my heart is now just as empty. To whoever finds this, please go. Let my broken dream be the start of your journey." Eleanor stared at the ticket. It was a leftover ticket to Paris, a ticket born from someone else's heartbreak. She looked around the crowded station, but there was no sign of who might have left it. It was just her own broken heart, and a ticket to the most romantic city in the world. She looked at her watch. If she packed her bags now, she could catch the midnight flight to London and then use this Eurostar ticket to go to Paris. It was completely mad. She had work tomorrow. She had a life to dismantle. But as she looked at the ticket, Eleanor realized she had nothing left to lose. The next morning, London was cloaked in a thick, gray fog. Eleanor stood inside the magnificent St. Pancras International Station, holding the cream-colored envelope tightly in her hand. She had not slept a wink. She had flown across the Atlantic, arrived in London, and was now boarding a high-speed train to France. As the train began to move, Eleanor looked out of the window. The English countryside blurred past in a flash of green and gray. She opened her notebook and looked at the handwritten note again. Who was the man who wrote this? Why did his lover not show up? She felt a strange, spiritual connection to this anonymous writer. They were both grieving a love that had died. The train entered the dark, quiet Channel Tunnel. Eleanor closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep, exhausted by her tears and travel. 2 hours later, a gentle voice over the loudspeaker woke her up. "Mesdames et messieurs, nous arrivons à Paris, Gare du Nord." Paris. The air was crisp, and the scent of freshly baked croissants and rich coffee immediately greeted her as she stepped off the train. Eleanor felt like she was dreaming. She checked into a small, charming hotel in Montmartre, with a balcony that overlooked the cobblestone streets. For the first 3 days, Eleanor simply walked. She walked through the Louvre, along the beautiful banks of the River Seine, and through the quiet corners of the Latin Quarter. She realized that Paris was not just a city for lovers, it was a city for healing. The beauty of the architecture and the slow pace of Parisian life began to soothe her aching soul. Everywhere she went, she carried the handwritten note in her coat pocket. It was her talisman. It reminded her that she was not alone in her suffering. On Friday evening, Eleanor decided it was time to visit the final destination. The note had mentioned the city where we first fell in love. And in Paris, there was one place where everyone went to seek a sign: the Eiffel Tower. The evening sky over Paris was a breathtaking shade of deep purple and gold. The Eiffel Tower began to sparkle, its thousands of lights dancing against the dark horizon. It was freezing cold, and Eleanor wrapped her long woolen scarf tightly around her neck. She took the lift up to the second floor of the tower. The view was magnificent. The entire city of Paris lay before her like a carpet of glittering diamonds. As Eleanor leaned against the cold iron railing, looking out at the River Seine, she pulled the note out of her pocket one last time. She felt a deep sense of gratitude. She whispered into the wind, "Thank you. Whoever you are, your broken dreams saved me." Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept across the tower. The note slipped from Eleanor's cold fingers. "Oh no!" she cried out. She lunged forward to catch it, but she bumped directly into a tall man standing next to her. The note fluttered through the air and landed perfectly on the man's chest. He caught it instinctively. "Ah, je suis désolé," the man said softly, his voice deep and polite. Then he corrected himself into a perfect, gentle British accent. "I am so sorry. Are you all right?" Eleanor was breathless. "I am so sorry. It was my fault. The wind took my note. May I have it back, please?" The man looked down at the paper in his hand. As his eyes read the words on the page, his entire body went completely rigid. The color drained from his face. He stared at the note, then looked up at Eleanor, his eyes wide with utter shock. Where did you get this?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Eleanor frowned, her heart beating faster. "I found it on a wooden bench at Grand Central Terminal in New York 3 days ago." The man reached into his own coat pocket and pulled out a fountain pen. It was a beautiful vintage pen with blue ink. He pointed at the handwriting on the note. "I wrote this," he said, his voice barely audible above the Parisian wind. "My name is Arthur." Eleanor felt the world stop spinning. She could hear nothing but the sound of her own heartbeat. Of all the places in Paris, of all the millions of people in the world, she had bumped into the owner of the leftover ticket. Arthur explained that he was a British writer living in New York. He had planned to surprise his girlfriend with a trip to Paris to propose, but she had ruthlessly ended the relationship via a text message, refusing to even meet him at the station. In his despair, he left the ticket on the bench and took a different flight back to Europe to clear his head. "I never expected anyone to actually find it," Arthur said, a faint, melancholic smile appearing on his face. "And I certainly never expected them to actually come to Paris." "I had my heart broken on that very same night," Eleanor said softly, looking into his kind, hazel eyes. I think I needed to believe that something beautiful could come out of sadness." Arthur looked at Eleanor, noticing the sincerity in her eyes, her tear-stained cheeks, and the way the Parisian lights reflected in her hair. For the first time in months, the heavy weight in his chest felt lighter. "Well," Arthur said gently, gesturing toward the beautiful city below them, "since you have my ticket and I have the memories, would you allow me to show you the real Paris, perhaps over a cup of hot chocolate?" Eleanor looked at the note in his hand, and then at the smile on his face. She realized that her fiancé leaving her wasn't the end of her life. It was simply the universe clearing the path so she could find the right train. "I would love that," Eleanor smiled. And there, beneath the sparkling lights of the Eiffel Tower, two broken hearts began to beat as one. It was not a story of a missed connection, but a story of a perfect destination. Destiny had left a ticket, and love had answered the call. What a beautiful story. Now let us review 5 useful British English words and phrases from this lesson. 1. Archivist, archivist. A person who maintains and is in charge of historic archives or records. 2. In pieces. Extremely sad or emotionally broken. Example, her heart was in pieces. 3. Not slept a wink, to not sleep at all. Example, she had not slept a wink during the flight. 4. Talisman, an object that is thought to bring good luck or protection. 5. Rigid, stiff and unable to move, usually due to fear or shock. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe English Way Up, and comment below with your favorite part of the story. See you in the next video.